Right. Good afternoon, everybody, from wherever you are listening in the world. Welcome back to the Wamly podcast, where we aim to solve the people puzzle. I'm your host, Francois. I'm the founder at Wamly, organizational psychologist, and absolutely passionate about this topic, and specifically my guest and the topic today, Mark Sham. Mark, thank you so much for joining. I'm really keen to have you on the podcast. You are a great friend, a phenomenal speaker. I'm really excited to speak with you about our interesting topic today. So thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, flattery will get you everywhere, and thank you for having me.
So Mark, we always start these episodes by just introducing the guest. So if you wouldn't mind just sharing a high level about yourself, and then we'll get straight into the topic.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, man. I think in short, I am a bunch of things rolled into one. I am an entrepreneur. I am a creator who loves to continue to create, and I have taken on the practice of creating very seriously. I am a speaker. I own a business called The Tryst and Suits and Sneakers, so there's a few companies within my stable. And really, for the last few years, I've been quite obsessed with helping people become better versions of themselves. And I know what that sounds like. I know that sounds like the pitch, but you know, when you take a certain amount of time to delve into what makes you happy and what makes you feel most alive, helping other people is just something that I love doing. So we do that in a variety of ways, which I'll get into. But yeah, speaker, entrepreneur, human, and just lover of life, I guess, that is navigating complexity like everybody else.
Come on. Yeah, Mark, I think a lot of what you said and what you do resonates so much with me because, you know, before I became a psychologist, I had a passion for people, developing people, optimizing people, but also the systems and the environment that we're in. And, you know, the topic today is around mental health and happiness and well-being. And I'm so curious to hear your take on it, especially post what just happened to all of us. And I guess we're still transitioning into the new world of work, which I'm quite passionate to say we're already there, guys. So the community, Mark, is HR. And our listeners and where we want to get to is business owners, HR practitioners who find themselves in this environment post this pandemic. And, you know, would you say mental health, well-being, I mean, it's a topic that's been discussed many times, but what's your take on that now?
Yeah, look, there's no question that people are going through an incredibly tough time right now because the last few years have been jarring. But as I look at the research, I see that before COVID, people were struggling significantly already. You know, for the last 10 years, I've been speaking around the world, and I've been trying to show people that by the numbers, it has never been a better time to be alive. But then when you look at the research, we have today, and this is pre-COVID, more people either overdosing on drugs and opioids or committing suicide, again, pre-COVID. So it's a very interesting thing to think about the idea that it has never been a better time to be alive, but more people are pulling the plug on their own lives. And even those who are alive and aren't considering suicide or aren't abusing opioids or drugs, we're still, I don't think we're fully processing the difficulties. Because what I've seen lately is that although it's never been a better time to be alive by the numbers, it's also never been a more complex time to be alive. And no one really taught us to deal with this complexity. So we have more information coming at us, more decisions to make on a daily basis, and the world is just more complex. And no one really taught us how to prepare or deal for this complexity. And so I think mental health absolutely is a major concern. And relative to the people listening to this, if you don't think that your personal life melds into your professional life, you're on another planet. So I think mental health is a bigger thing than ever. And it's certainly something we have to start speaking about more regularly because people are going through a hard time, but they don't know how to process what they're going through.
Right. So, Mark, a couple of things from that comment that I picked up. Firstly, is you speak about the fact that we need to speak about this more. And in my career, when I've been in a conversation or listened in an audience to this topic, it very often ended up being a highly theoretical conversation with a lot of models around burnouts and job demands and job resources, where I then leave that session as an audience member not really understanding what it means so that we must speak about it more. How? That's the first part of my observation and question. And second to it is you mentioned that we haven't been really, or we weren't really taught how to deal with this. Where should that have happened? And if it didn't happen, how do we deal with it now?
Yeah, I mean, two really fundamental questions there. The first thing is I think that everybody's just winging it in life. We don't appreciate that enough, that we are, as kids, we look out into the world and we think, wow, those adults, they really have their life together. And then you become an adult and you realize that we're all just winging it. So that's one. And I don't think people teach us how to process our emotions. I think we talk about it in broad strokes, but we don't actually actively get taught how to have a relationship with pain or failure or mistakes, which are inevitable in life. And we grow up winging it. I think more specifically to the second part of your question, what's happening right now is that there aren't that many spaces to talk about mental health or just share what we're going through, because where do you do it? When you're at work, you're there to work. When you're at home, it's quite hard to offload emotionally on your toddler. When you go to a bar or you go for weekend drinks, whatever, if you start splashing out about where you're at and things aren't perfect, then you kind of become the negative Nancy of the discussion. So I just think we're actually lacking space to talk about where we're at and some of the difficulties we're going through. You know, no one taught us that in life, most of life is quite binary. Life is not binary. So you can be both excited, grateful for what's going on in your life, happy that you have a roof over your head and food, but you can also be feeling tremendous overwhelm with the economy. You can feel tremendous pressure, and that both are okay. So we either tend to be on or off, and since we're not very in practice with expressing where we're at and how we're feeling, we bottle these things up, and we're not better for it. And so what you find is that emotions are energy in motion. They have to go somewhere. And since we don't process these things often, we sweep them under the rug, and they come out when and where we least expect them to, and they come out with compound interest. So I think mental health is an absolute thing we need to start taking control of. I think there's also a stigmatism around mental health, right? Because it's almost like if you're seeing someone, if you go see a therapist, or if you're talking to someone, we're almost embarrassed about it, like, I've been seeing someone, like undercover. When that's crazy, because the best sports people in the world have coaches. And if they're the best at what they do and they have a coach, why are we so embarrassed to go talk to someone who deals in this? Or even just talk to our friends?
Yes.
And again, if you don't think that your personal life melds into your professional life, you are crazy. So I just think it's more about taking away the stigmatism, that talking about these things that are okay, that you don't have to be entirely broken to speak about some of the difficulties that you're going through in your life. And of course, that you can be both, that you can be grateful, excited, and happy, but you can also be overwhelmed, under pressure, going through a bit of a hard time. All of these are okay.
Yeah. Isn't it called cognitive dissonance?
That's absolutely right.
Yes. Yes.
That's just an interesting concept, because simply, for the longest time, even in my own life, I felt like a fraud. I'm angry about something, so I don't practice gratitude. Because you think, like, if you're feeling one emotion, being anger or frustration or sadness or hurt, then how am I supposed to, then I'm a fraud for trying to practice gratitude when really I'm angry.
Yes.
But the reality is that the very essence of humanity is that you can hold two or more opposing thoughts and feelings in your head, your heart, at the same time. That is the essence of being human. You're not a fraud, you're human.
Yes.
Both are
Yes.
true.
Yes, absolutely. Mark, when we have people speak about this topic, they're either an expert, so they've studied this and, they have deep knowledge about it, or there is someone who is going through it and is authentic enough to speak about it and then do something about it. So I'm quite curious to know why this passion for happiness and for mental health and well-being. Where did that start for you?
Yeah, for the last, I would say, decade or more, I've been trying to research and study happiness informally, read books about it, watch videos about it. I suppose it just came down to me wanting to be a happier version of myself. What does happiness mean to me? How can I be better? How can I be happier? And it's been something that I've been curious about. And when I would speak to other people about it, I realized that oftentimes people don't ask themselves these hard questions because they're uncomfortable. We just wake up, get ready for work, go to work, do our work, come home from work, drink because of work. Like, we just stumble into the next day and the next week, And then in 2019, I moved to London with my then fiancée, and by the end of the year, we had broken up. And if you've ever gone through something of that nature where you think your life is going in one direction and suddenly you go in the other, it's quite jarring. And it brought about a whole bunch of questions like, where am I going in my life? I'm 35 years old. I'm broken. And so I just started going back to how can I help myself? And the irony is that I decided in December 2019 to put together this talk about happiness, not as a happiness guru, but someone who speaks for a living. I just thought I'd share my own personal observations about happiness and about mental health. And the first time I did it, I got such an incredible response because I didn't try attack it as a professional or as an expert. I just try to speak human to human. And I think one of the skills that I have as a speaker is the ability to acquire information, knowledge, and understanding, and then disseminate it back in a way that sticks, to get people to see it differently.
Yes.
And then, as fate would have it, I think I caused COVID, because then basically I started talking about happiness, and God was like, oh, is it? You want to talk about happiness? Well, here's a little global pandemic you can practice. And COVID turned my life upside down. And that's a story for later. But I went on this whole journey to really fix myself, and I was kind of taking other people along for the ride. But really, I feel my best when I'm creating value for others. And what I've seen, I've had tens of thousands of people now attend the happiness workshop or the talks. And most feedback I just get is that, like, thank you for speaking human to human and for talking about the things that we all know but we don't do. Or thank you for showing it to me in a way that I didn't see it before, even though I knew the thing you were saying. I just didn't see it like that. And I guess it comes back to the heart of I want to help people become better versions of themselves. And at the heart, I just want to be happy. And I'm at my best when I'm helping other people to do the same. That's really where it came from. And now that it's taken on a life of its own, actually, ironically today, I literally just finished teaching a happiness workshop for a corporate and then jumped on this call with you. So it's taken on a life of its own, really.
Amazing. I think that's an incredibly authentic way to do it, is to speak from the heart, from your own perspective, but also from your own personal experience, which is, your personal reality. Where are the people now, Mark? What are you picking up from stakeholders, individuals in corporates, HR departments, line managers? Where are they at? What is the current viewpoint? What are the perspectives that you're trying to address?
Yeah, such a good question. I guess the short answer is that no matter where you live in the world, COVID changed things. It caused a lot of pain. It changed our habits, our routines, our structures. We lost a lot of loved ones. The lockdowns, whether you agree with them or not, have severe unintended consequences on humanity. More specifically in South Africa, I think people are not only reeling from the impact of COVID over the last 2 years and everything that came with it, but there are financial and economic implications. I mean, you cannot just shut down an economy for months on end without helping people and expect the economy to just jump back on its feet. There are delayed reactions, and people are feeling that. So I think COVID is a symptom of the issues we are facing. It's not the root cause, but it's a big part of it. People are feeling just seriously ground down by life, because if it's not COVID, it's soaring petrol prices, it's inflation, it's load shedding in our case here in South Africa, where right now, part of why I'm doing this interview with you like this and not in my studio is because the studio right behind me there has no lighting and our generator's not working. And so it's this general grind that people are feeling. And it's almost as if we compare stresses. So what people will do is, if you haven't lost a loved one, or if you've still got a job, apparently you're not allowed to feel stress. This happened during COVID equally, right? It was like, wow, my whole income got taken away from me. Oh, really? But did you lose your brother? You're still alive. And it was almost like, no, I'm not saying I've suffered your pain. I'm just saying I'm going through my own thing. And so I think there has been somewhat of a suppression in some instances. And because we're under pressure, your salary hasn't increased with inflation. The people who do have jobs are working harder than ever to get half as far. So these pressures are grinding people. They're paralyzing people. I actually put up a poll on my Facebook page a few months ago and asked people where they're at, and the responses were frightening, from just feeling paralyzed or still having a level of people anxiety, or just their routine has totally been broken. Like one lady said, I used to go to the movies every single week. It was just my thing. I can't seem to get back there. It's not about my fear of COVID or people or money. Something just changed in my behavior, because for 2 years I wasn't allowed, and now I can't seem to get back there. So people are feeling all sorts of things. And again, your personal melds into your professional. And of course, the economy is just, Yeah, we're getting ground down, and not to make it political either, but of course, when you have the news day in, day out of people who are so corrupt and stealing the money, it just, you can see by the numbers, consumer confidence is down low, people are under more pressure. And again, where is the space for people to talk about it? It's right now, you must either be on your deathbed or on the verge of antidepressants to be able to talk about it.
Yeah.
And that is not healthy, because we don't have to let it get that far before we start taking stock of where we're at and what's going on. But yeah, people are struggling, and I think it's having a direct impact on people's work, their performance. Because you know what it's like, Francois. If you wake up tired, frustrated, angry, hungover, I mean, I'm just being facetious, but whatever when you're not in perfect peak state, do you show up your best at work?
Absolutely not.
So, we're suffering from one major hangover from corruption, COVID, soaring electricity prices, petrol prices, a broken economy, 50% unemployment, prices soaring. How can people be
The list goes
perfect
on.
right now?
Yeah, yeah. So, okay, I'm guessing the audience listening to that is either reminded or overwhelmed by these facts. And that's what they are. They're facts. This is the current reality. This is the environment we're in. This is the complexity that we need to navigate. The question now becomes how, right? And, part of the podcast is to try and solve the people puzzle. And this is a big piece in the puzzle, is mental health, happiness, well-being, the state of employees, the state of individuals and organizations, personal, professional, all mingled together. Where do we start? What do we do?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a few great things. So obviously, happiness or mental health is complicated. It's never just one thing. That's a great way to start. There's no silver bullet to happiness. There's no silver bullet to mental health. You are effectively a collection of actions that you take on a second-by-second and minute-by-minute basis.
Sure.
The problem is that we have these underlying beliefs, or stories as I call them, that impact your worldview, and they impact your actions that you take on a daily basis. Something that's really helped me lately is that we simply cannot wait to feel good to take an action. Action is the thing that helps you understand the world emotionally rather than just intellectually. So we have to take a little bit of time to introspect. Where are we at? What are we feeling? Why are we feeling these things? And we have to at least get to the point that we can, at a base level, express them. Express them to your best friend, express them to your wife, express them to someone. And you don't have to break down in tears or be admitted to a psych ward just to share how you're feeling. You would be surprised how far just expressing in 2 minutes how you're feeling about something. This allows you to process. But it speaks to a bigger issue, because we weren't taught how to have a relationship with pain or how to express our emotions very often.
Sure.
There's a deep perspective around that. But fundamentally, people have got to start taking action to break the cycle. Because once you take an action, it kind of cures the fear. And what I've come to understand is that action is the thing that creates motivation to want to take more action.
Sure.
So once you start doing something, whatever, one of the quick fire ways I've found is, when I'm in a bad mental state, I try to find a place where I can create value. Now, this is also really hard for some people, because we tend to keep score around value creation. I'll only do something once, and if it's not returned, then I won't do it again. But what happens if you break those rules? In fact, what happens if you find out and you question those rules in the first place, and you find out that they aren't yours? How do you just create value to solve and hack the system of value creation? A lot of people aren't doing simple things. Like, happiness is quite practical. So is mental health, sleep, rest, your eating, your training. Not to have a six-pack, because those are the little things that come together. You become who you practice to be on a daily basis. So expressing your emotions a bit more. Movement is medicine. Move regularly. I found meditation to be quite helpful. Now, if I heard myself say this 5 years ago, I would have laughed at me and called me a hippie. But the act of diverting your attention, a lot of people think meditation is about thinking nothing, whereas I think meditation the word means to become familiar with.
Yes.
So just to shift your attention toward a future that is brighter than the present. A lot of this sounds esoteric to people, but what I've come to see is that the difference between happy people and people who are mentally strong from a mental health perspective, they're not more talented, they're not more gifted, they're not smarter, they're not more capable. They just take different actions. So the biggest one lately is that we cannot wait to feel good to take an action. Otherwise, you will rarely take an action. And when you don't take action, you fall into a loop. I don't take action, then I feel worse about myself. That makes me want to take less of an action, which makes me feel worse about myself. On the flip side, take an action, do something, create value, whatever it is, leads you to wanting to take more action. And you can literally will your way out of a situation. So I would combine those kinds of three things, like definitely expressing your emotions a bit more, little acts, sleep, exercise, meditation, movement, you name it. And then we have to just break the cycle somewhere.
So many golden nuggets, so many one-liners. I mean, that was incredible. I want to circle back to where you started, because that is the start. You mentioned it's crucial for people to get to a place where they can think before they express. So creating that environment where I'm still, whatever that looks like for you, but it's that self-awareness, that introspection, that me time where I'm not distracted or being overwhelmed by the external environment, to first actually get to a point where I understand what am I feeling, right? Yeah. Because it's so difficult to express your feelings in a safe environment with loved ones or whoever you choose to do it, coach, counselor, if you're not exactly sure what you're feeling.
Yeah, you nailed it. I think the problem with self-awareness is that we think we have it from when we're born, and we don't. Like common sense, which isn't so common, neither is self-awareness. Because self-awareness is a practice. And the practice of self-awareness is quite hard because it requires you to take some time to sit your ass down and ask yourself some hard questions. Yes. And the reason why most people don't do that is simply because asking yourself uncomfortable or hard questions is something we tend to avoid. The very reason why we don't express our emotions in the first place is because it's hard to be vulnerable. We're out of practice with expressing our emotions or being vulnerable. I think it's the same with self-awareness. We're out of practice with asking ourselves, what is going on here? And I don't believe you can be happy or work toward solving your mental health if you don't first practice self-awareness. But in itself, it is a practice. And so to be able to sit down and ask yourself uncomfortable questions, to recognize that, for example, the brain is designed to keep you safe, not make you happy, which is why human beings tend to do anything to avoid pain, which is impossible. So we'll do anything to numb it. Part of that is that we distract ourselves with busyness. We throw ourselves into our work. We often think of people numbing their emotions or where they're at with alcohol and drugs, but you can numb your emotional state with too much work, with distraction, with endless social media, with exercise. It's not that exercise is bad, but it all depends on why you do it. Do you take a run to clear your head and think about the world, or do you run away? So, a big question I ask is, are you running away from the darkness, or are you running toward light?
Sure.
Because exercise in itself is a great tool, but when you're using exercise to get away from your problems, a lot of people do that. When you use busyness, activities, when you use work to get away from rather than sitting down. I think one of the hardest things is to sit your ass down and ask yourself hard questions, because it's uncomfortable. And who wants to take on uncomfortable? But yes, the one precedes the other. So I think you're absolutely on point. But again, people want the thing, Francois, often, but they don't want to do the work. And I think you have to get to a point of realization that a lot of how you've arrived at the point that you're at is on you. Like, you didn't cause COVID, but you responded in a certain way. You didn't take the time to process that bad things happen to good people and you did nothing to deserve it. You don't want to process those emotions. So a lot of it can be pinned back to us. But again, the problem is that no one taught you how to do this when you were young. We went to school, we learned math, English, science, but no one taught you how to be happy. No one taught you relationship with self. And it shows in the world. But at some point, if you want the mental health, you have to do the thing. You have to do the work. And I think the starting point, quite rightly, is sitting your ass down and asking yourself some hard questions.
So let's go into that, but then move on. So sitting your ass down, asking yourself difficult questions, is looking in the mirror, right? And I've seen and practiced myself the value of something like journaling as a tool to start to express at least where I'm at. Once the pen is on the paper, the thoughts are out there, I can reflect on them, I can read them back to myself, I can reflect and meditate on them, and then I go and share. And I start talking and speaking about it. As you rightfully said, I love that. People think the brain can avoid pain. It can't, so we numb it. So to confront that after you've realized it is now the next step. So finding a safe environment where it is okay to then go and speak about it, right?
I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head with journaling. Because a lot of what people don't understand is that happiness or mental health is in the doing, not the knowing. You can't know your way to
Sure.
happiness. You
Come on.
can't know your way to mental health. It's a practice, it's a thing that you do. So a lot of people want the clarity, but they don't want to take the time to even just do something basic as journaling. I would suggest journaling, by the way. I think it is highly cathartic, but a lot of people have stories in their head as to why they don't do it. I'm busy, I don't have time, I'm not a good writer. We make up these stories in our head as to why we can't do it. And I don't know if it's ever happened to you, in fact, I know it has, that there's something in front of you that's quite hard, and you make it out to be bigger than what it is, and then you do it, and you're like, oh, that wasn't so hard.
Yes.
Action kills fear.
Yes.
So a lot of times people would just do really well. If you're listening to this right now, you could quite easily just sit down for 20 minutes and just write down everything you're feeling. There's no structure to it. It's only for you. And then, as you rightly pointed out, once it is on paper, it's now separate from you and you can reflect on it.
Yes.
I would say that's a really good practice. But a lot of people, again, it's much easier to sit on your couch and drink a beer than it is to sit down and journal and introspect your feelings. So again, a lot of people have arrived at a certain place. They're unhappy, they're not feeling good mentally, but they don't want to do the things necessary. And they're in a bit of a cycle. I think journaling is a really good place to start.
So Mark, let's deep dive then into the happiness workshop. Okay. And again, audience, this is not selling Mark. This is going into lessons learned, what he's seeing practically. He's on road shows week in and week out, delivering these talks and presenting these workshops. So the audience rocks up. You get them to reflect. You get them to think. You get them to start taking action. What then?
Yeah, it's a good question. Well, first, like if you take this morning, when people rocked up here, they've got this confused look on their face because the word happiness and mental health, they mean different things to different people. Those words are loaded. So oftentimes we spend a bit of time just trying to get people to get beyond themselves and just be in the moment and realize that this is a human-to-human discussion. I think once people have left, there would be three things I would recommend. So introspection is a constant. Taking some time to constantly ask yourself where you're at, what's going on, why do you feel how you feel, where does it come from? These are really important questions, and they change week to week because the context changes. So introspection, no question. But what I find is if you can just get people in the habit of taking small actions. Let me give you a simple one. You want to often feel valued by other people, but we don't always want to do the work to create value for others. One of the little practices I've been trying lately is that if I haven't spoken to someone for 2 or 3 months, I just send them a quick voice note while I'm driving to say, hey, I've gotten into this habit that when I think about someone and I haven't seen them for a while, I just give them a shout, and I thought of you today and I hope you're well, and please let me know how you're doing. And I know people say, how are you? But I'm actually asking, how are you?
Yes.
That, a lot like brushing your teeth, it's actually not something you have to think about, at least I hope not, if you're listening or watching. It's a kind of a habit. It's not a question of do you do it. So it's just understanding that most of how you're made up is just a series of habits. You become who you practice to be on a daily basis. So it's more about just taking some introspection and then taking an action, then iterating that action and introspecting it, then taking another action. And you'll find human beings are actually quite sharp. We figure it out. But the last I would say for sure is expressing of your emotions, is that we are so out of practice with it and we're just not better for it. And I don't know if you can be happy if you can't just state where you're at and why on a regular basis.
Yes.
Yes. I think that those are the three core things.
Brilliant. I think what I'm continuously hearing is, irrespective of what you're feeling, you'll continue to remain there if you don't do something. And that something doesn't have to be this massive, huge thing. We don't necessarily have to roll out this huge EVP or EAP, employee assistance program, with a shotgun approach and spend millions. It can be something as simple as sending someone, a loved one, a friend, a colleague, a voice note, a clip, to really care about how they are doing. Because that in itself is creating a platform for them, Mark, to respond back. And there's the opportunity to share their emotional current state.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's complex, and we are taking even a full day workshop is quite hard. And I'm not selling it in that way. I'm saying like these are complex topics They take a long time. So even in half an hour, it's hard to get into the nitty-gritty of it. But yes, I think that taking an action is everything, because action helps you understand something emotionally where previously you only understood it intellectually. I would definitely just advise around people, stop trying to avoid pain. Get comfortable with hard. Stop avoiding difficult. Uncomfortable isn't bad. Just because something ends doesn't make it bad. These are things that we weren't taught, but you will learn. And I guess the final thing I'd love to leave you with is that everything in life comes at a price. So there is a cost to you not taking an action. Gym. You wake up in the morning, you don't feel like going to gym. Now you're faced with, do you pay the price of uncomfort? Or do you pay the price of lack of self-esteem a few weeks from now? Oftentimes we don't see that they're connected. But if you express your emotions, you are paying a price because it's uncomfortable. If you don't express your emotions, if you keep sweeping your emotional state under the rug, you will pay a price, a much more hefty price later. They are connected. It's just that human beings don't think they are sometimes.
Yes.
You will pay a much more expensive price for not expressing yourself, for not processing your emotions. So you pay now or you pay later. There is always a cost to everything in life. It's just that usually later is more expensive. That mindset for me has helped me so much with, if it's going to gym in the morning, if it is processing my emotions. Is it hard? Yes. What happens if I don't do it? Much more expensive.
Yes.
Not taking an action? No problem. I don't feel like it. I'm tired. Well, yes, of course you're tired. There's a cost to taking an action when you're tired. It is the price of uncomfort. But if you don't take that action, later you will pay the price of regret, much more expensive. And so I just think sometimes when you can help people see it in that light, then like anything, once you start taking a regular action, it becomes quite easy to repeat that action, to the point that it's like brushing your teeth. You don't think about brushing your teeth anymore. It's a decision you made long ago, and there is freedom in discipline. There's freedom in making a decision once. But we are just a series of practices. If I could leave it with anything, we are a series of practices. So what are you practicing on a daily basis?
Sure, Mark. So many golden nuggets. I really appreciate that. I think I agree with you. And if you're in the audience right now and you're listening to this and you feel heavy and you feel confronted with this, I think it's an opportunity for you to maybe create some time for yourself. Get your emotions out on a piece of paper. Start sharing that with loved ones where you feel safe, and then take some action. So, Mark, thank you so much for your time, your insight, your wisdom. This was an incredible episode. Where can the audience reach you or make contact with you if they would like to explore this more with you, maybe go through the happiness workshop as an organization or a team?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm quite prevalent on social media, so I have a Facebook page. Please note, there's a page and a profile. My profile's private. My public page, Mark Sham, facebook.com/Mark's Microphone. That's my public page. I'm on Twitter at Mark Sham. I'm on Instagram, Shamwich. It's a private joke, like sandwich, but Shamwich. And marksham.com if you want to just go find out more. I mean, I think the biggest thing is I'm definitely not here to sell anything. I'm just here to help. So I hope it was taken as such, and I hope you all got value.
Absolutely. No, I know we did. Absolutely. Thank you so much in joining us for another episode in Solving the People Puzzle. Have a great day, bud.
Cheers, brother.